the sun if you can't see. So let's start with the Gemara. We're at the end of the Mishnah, Chav Dalet Amud Aleph 24a, the bottom of the page. Summa. Summa is a blind man, and the Gemara is going to discuss more about blind people. She'ena Piretz Shema Umetargim. He is allowed to be a chazan for Shema. What's a big deal? Why can't a blind person be a chazan for Shema? He has to say Shema every single day. Well, if you look at the Siddur, and in the Siddur, one of the blessings is, before Shema, Baruch Atah Hashem, Yotzer HaMa'oros. Siddur online. Blessed are you, Hashem, Yotzer, who creates HaMa'oros, the lights. Which lights? The lights in the heaven, which are the sun and the moon. There he is. Right behind the page. The end of the page. Baruch Atah Hashem, Yotzer HaMa'oros. Blessed are you, Hashem, who creates the lights, the sun and the moon. And the blind person has no benefit from the sun or the moon because he can't see it. So you would think to yourself that he cannot be a chazan. Truth is, a blind person could be chazan because although they have no benefit directly from the sun, but they have benefit from others who have the sun.
But the sun, at least they can also have actually benefit in another way I was thinking.
Because when a blind person walks on the street and he comes to the street corner, and it's not like the fancy street corners where they know, where you have signals, he wants to know when to cross or not. Nowadays, there's technologies which could help them, could read to them, which could help them cross the street. But then they would stop by the street corner and wait for someone to cross the street. That's the way it used to be.
Yeah, but there's also the warmth of the sun. Actually, that they can have too.
Correct. But ma'oros means the luminaries, which gives light. So since a blind person has benefit from someone which could see, therefore they can make the blessing Yotzer Ma'oros. Hashem creates the lights. And the Gemara will actually bring a story about that, about how one of the Amirayim walked by night in the street and he saw a blind person holding a lantern, holding a flashlight. He asked him, "You're a blind person. What are you holding a flashlight for? What do you need it for?" And he said, "Because other people could help me walk and they need a lantern to see where to go. I don't bump into anything. I don't trip over anything at all." Blindness is not necessarily an impediment either. There is one of the most, greatest card magicians in the world. He's a blind person. It's not necessarily an impediment. And
you said a card magician? You said
card, like cards, playing cards.
Oh,
which you can't even see them.
You're get a hearing aid and delay it.
And umetargim, and another chiddush is that he's also allowed to translate into Aramaic. You think to yourself that a person who's blind cannot read the Torah, right? They can't be a Bal Koreh. He can't be the one to read the Torah because they're blind. So since he definitely cannot be a Bal Koreh, so you might think he cannot be a metargim. He cannot be the one to be the translator for the Torah. As remember, you had verse by verse translation. So you might be a very wise person, but he's not a person who's able to read. So the halacha is that a person who is blind could translate the Torah because it's not necessarily dependent on sight. There's different levels of blindness. There's a blind person which was once able to see and now can no longer see. And then there's a blind person which can never see in his life. They actually have different halachic aspects. A blind person was once able to see but now cannot see is obligated in every single mitzvah in the Torah. A blind person who is never able to see in their life, they have certain mitzvahs which they don't have a biblical obligation. And more, it's of a rabbinical obligation. And we could get to that soon. If someone is blind in one eye, that's considered to be totally, obviously valid, a complete person, legally blind as well. It's talking about someone who literally cannot see at all. Someone who's blind in one eye could be a chazan. They were not allowed to be a Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash if they're blind in one eye. They cannot be a member of the Sanhedrin, someone to do capital punishment in the times of the Sanhedrin, when they had capital punishment. The 248 limbs of the body, according to Chassidus, correspond to 248 mitzvahs in the Torah, and there's 248 connections that we have to Hashem.
248 positive mitzvahs.
Correct.
We use all of our limbs for it.
And therefore, someone who is blind, two of their limbs, two eyes, are missing. Two of their eyes are not functioning properly. That means two of their connections to the Torah are not the way it's supposed to be. Two of their connections to Hashem, and hence hence their connection is not as strong. You would think, and therefore, you would think to say they should not be chazan. And there's actually opinions which say that on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you should look for a chazan who is able to see in both eyes. And not missing one eye is because they're saying it could be a sign of a spiritual deficiency, God forbid. But nowadays, you don't have to be strict about it. Although the Mishnah Brura, Chafetz Chaim writes, that on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you should look for a chazan who is sighted, could see from both eyes. But if there's a better chazan, someone with a better voice, we're going to talk about voices soon in the Gemara, if he could sing. They should rather be chazan. In practice, I don't think that we're strict in that, but I'm not so aware of the details in that respect. Continues the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, Kol she'lo ra'a ma'oris miyamav einay peres al shema. If you had someone who was never able to see in their life, they are not allowed to be the chazan when you say Shema, Yetzer Ma'oris, because they cannot say this bracha, this blessing, because they were somebody who was non-sighted. So you cannot say the bracha. The Gemara will explain the two opinions. If someone who is blind could say the bracha of Yetzer Ma'oris, Hashem who creates the sun to see, and the moon, or not. The Sfas Emes, first Getter Rebbe, he says that with Rabbi Yehuda is saying even a bigger thing. Not just he cannot be chazan, even for himself he cannot say it. Because since he cannot see the sun. So even if he's not chazan, he can't say it, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and he has to answer amen to the chazan. And if he can't say it for himself, definitely can't be the chazan either. Now, our Mishnah in general is not discussing all the halachas of a blind person, because we're in the context of who is allowed to read the Torah. So in that context, we're discussing a blind man can't read the Torah. Once he cannot read the Torah, he could be chazan. It's halachas of a shul, halachas of birchas kohanim. We'll get to it soon. That blessing of the Kohanim, if a Kohen has a mum, a blemish that will disqualify them from blessing in the Beis HaMikdash, then they are not allowed to go to Birchas Kohanim either. For example, if a Kohen marries a divorcee, we had someone, pretty much I think everyone over here got to knew pretty well in our community, was a Kohen, very prominent person, but he became religious from later in life, and he was married to a woman who was divorced. And although he was a Kohen, he was never able to receive the Aliyah of Kohen. He was never able to go up and do Birchas Kohanim, give the blessing of Kohanim, because he was married to a divorcee. And similarly, if a Kohen is blind in one eye, he cannot, halachically, he would not be able to go up and Birchas Kohanim. The thing is, the caveat is that if everyone is so familiar with it, and therefore it's not considered to be a deficiency. They could be. For example, I grew up with somebody who their hand didn't have fingers, right? That's the way they were born, right? That's the way Hashem made them. It wasn't like an accident or anything, but you're so used to seeing them that way that you don't even think twice about it, right? And you see many times a child in a wheelchair that grow up, and everyone in their class thinks it's normal. Or someone with a scarred face. If you're used to them so often, you don't even look at it as a problem. So if everyone in the city is familiar with a person who's blind or blind eye, even if they're blind in two eyes, but everyone in the city knows, and it's not going to be anything out of the ordinary, so then they're allowed to do Birchas Kohanim. So you sort of have I remember when this person, his wife passed away, when Hashem, they're both in their 90s, and now for the first time, he was allowed to do Birchas Kohanim. He was allowed to get the Aliyah of Kohen, and he did it with such a simcha, such a happiness, such a joy. And finally, for the first time, he's able to do Birchas Kohanim. I'm going to share a short video of the Rabbi about when the Tanya, in the year 1991, was printed for the first time in Braille. First, you can see it over here in two places on the screen. The Rebbe discusses how when Tanya is being printed all over the world, and it was even printed actually in outer space once. But everywhere there's Jews, and the Rebbe says even those who are yoshvei choshech v'tzalmavos, even those who sit in darkness and their entire lives are dark, which is those people which are blind. And the purpose of sight, what's the purpose? Hashem gave us the ability to see, is to see the greatness of Hashem's. If you see the world, how great Hashem's things are. When Mashiach comes, we'll see godliness with our physical eyes. That's a purpose of sight. And therefore, someone who's missing their sight was, in many ways, were cut off from learning. And but here, Tanya was translated, it was printed in Braille for the first time. So then it says even those in darkness are able to finally learn Tanya. And this is part of the process, he says, of the coming of Mashiach. Literally, it was Tafshin Nun Beis, 1991. This is literally part of the process of bringing Mashiach. So I'm going to share the video. I hope the audio goes out good over here. I'll make it full screen about this very short video about how they bring the first edition of the Braille Tanya to the Rebbe.
Order of the day. Give both Mashiach.
אסתר, בכתב ברייל לעברים הוא כתב את החלק ראשון של טניה.
Das macht der Drill für die Versend nicht. Die macht der Drill.
Lane, that's for you. How much?
4.
זה שהוא כל ספר. בשורות הצלחה רבה.
So that was the idea. So the Rebbe spoke about it afterwards that week. By the Fabring, and the Rebbe spoke about it, and now the Tanya's in Braille, even those who are unable to, those who sit in darkness can now read. And you have the famous joke that there was one time a person was in the park on Chol Moed Pesach, and he's sitting on the park bench and he's eating his matzah. And there's a blind person next to him sitting on the bench, enjoying the fresh air. So he's being nice and he offers him, here, you want some? And he says, sure. And he takes it. And the blind person starts feeling it, feels all the bumps and ridges. And he looks at him and he says, who wrote this trash? Anyways, there's a story of the Rambam. The Rambam was a physician in the royal palace of the Sultan of Egypt. And the Rambam was so popular, and many other advisors were so jealous of the Rambam that they always tried discrediting him. And there's many stories. I'm sure many of them have good sources that where they actually came from. There's many stories about the Rambam with his, how he had to deal with all the schemes of all these other advisors to the Sultan were always plotting against the Rambam, trying to discredit him, that he doesn't know what he's saying, or trying to make libels against him. And one of the stories goes that the Rambam was he wrote in Moreh Nevuchim, he wrote also in the Mishnah Torah that everything has their nature that they were made with. And nothing could, and you have a nature you're made with, and you can't really change your nature. Anyways, they came and they brought a blind person. They said they came to the Sultan and they said, listen, the Rambam, he says he's a big doctor. And he says that people can change your nature. Now, we say two things. First of all, he could change your nature. And second of all, we're greater doctors than him. I don't know why you care about him so much. We're greater doctors than him. He said, really? Yeah, let's see. So he says, listen, we'll have a contest with the Rambam in front of the king, and we'll see who's a greater doctor. Anyways, and the Sultan agreed. They came, they had a contest in front of the king. They brought a blind person and in front of the king, and they said, look at this person, he's completely blind. And they did many tests in front of the king to show this person is blind. And they told the Rambam, could you heal him? He says, I'm not able to heal him. I can't. I don't have the capability to do it. Maybe today's technology could do something. And they said, listen, we're going to do something. They made a potion, they gave it to him. And suddenly this blind person opened his eyes and he said, oh, I could see. And he went to the king and he bowed down and suddenly he could see, miraculous. And they told the Sultan, you see, you call him a big doctor, we're much greater doctors than he is. So the Rambam went over to him, he took out a handkerchief and he waved in front of him and he asked the person, what color is this handkerchief? And the person said, it's red. So the Rambam said, if this person never saw in his life, how should he know the difference between colors?
Yeah, how should he know that this is red? What do you know?
And again, the Rambam held up his point, that in many ways. So the idea is that someone who is blind, in halakha, it's called saginar. They have a lot of light. Blindness could be from lack of vision or could be from seeing a lot. And definitely today, every single thing, every single person, even someone who is blind, is not an impediment, and they're able to do Torah mitzvahs just same way as every single other person. As a matter of fact, if you have an adult, someone over 13 who is blind, or a child under 13 who is not blind, which one do you choose for the chazan? The adult who is blind, over 13. Because he has a much stronger obligation than the one who's under 13. Let's continue with the Gemara. Says the Gemara, my time. Our Mishnah stated that when you're honoring an individual, you should honor with maftir, with the last aliyah. This person should also be chazan for musaf, and he should be chazan when you say Shema. And if he's a kohen, he should be the one to lead all the other kohanim, either in the blessing of the kohanim or saying the bracha, the blessing, or in the places where only one kohen would say the bracha, or would say brachas kohanim, he should do it. Now, it seems to say over here that you're giving this to the most honored person that you could find, the wisest person, the great sage. Is a maftir considered to be an honorable aliyah? Now, I know in Chabad it's a very honorable aliyah. It's probably the most honorable aliyah. They get to have Torah. All the Rebbeim, all the Rebbes would only get maftir. That would almost only get maftir. That's aliyah they would get. But throughout the world, different aliyahs are more important. For example, some places have shishi, right? It's the most famous thing by Ashkenazim. Shishi, the sixth Aliyah. I think Noida Yehuda, I was reading in a book when he became the Rav in Prague, and they gave him every week a Revi'i, the fourth Aliyah. The Aliyahs, the first 7 Aliyahs on Shabbos are Midaraisa, or from the Torah. You have to learn Torah all the time. And Moshe Rabbeinu instituted the Aliyahs. The Aliyah of Maftir is the 7th Aliyah, and the 7th Aliyah is the Rabbanon. It was only instituted much later, sometime in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. Sometime perhaps during the Greek era. In that era, that's when they instituted the Haftorah. And the only reason why the Haftorah gets an Aliyah, does Maftir, the last 3 verses, is just to show you how the Navi is not less important. The prophets are not less important than the Torah, as we learned just in the previously on this page. So what's more important, the first 7 Aliyahs or the last Aliyah? Obviously, the first 7 are the most important ones. There was one time a guest who came to a city, and he came to the shul on Shabbos, and they called him up they honored him, they gave him an Aliyah, they gave him Revi'i, the 4th Aliyah. And afterwards, a guest comes over to the Gabbai of the shul, and he says, thank you very much for the Aliyah. Just in the place, I want you to know that in the place where we come from, Revi'i, we only give it to like the losers, like the good for nothings. It's the people who you don't really want to give an Aliyah to. We give them Revi'i. So the Gabbai said, yes, by us also. No, but getting an Aliyah is a very special, honorable thing. Yes, indeed, and yeah. So I one time received an Aliyah. And I got maftir. This is when Baruch Hashem, had a baby boy a few years ago. One of my brother-in-laws, they come from different circles. And after I got the maftir, he came over to me and says, why couldn't you get a proper deraisa aliyah? Why couldn't you get a proper aliyah from the Torah? Why do you have to get a rabbanon aliyah? An aliyah from which is a rabbinical enactment for many, many years later. So this is not his question. This is an old question. It's a question that Gemara asks right over here. My time, what's the reason that they said the one who receives maftir, he should be the one to be the chazan for Shema, he should be the one to Birchas Kohanim, he should be the chazan for Musaf, and here's the source. The one who gets maftir should be chazan for Musaf. What's the reason why? Rav Papa says, Mishum kavod, because of honor. In a way, it's dishonorable, he says, to get maftir, because it's not a aliyah on the same level. Even a child is allowed to get maftir, which it cannot get a regular aliyah. So, in order to give the person an honor, a person shouldn't feel slighted that they got maftir. Because of that, they said the person who receives maftir should also say should be chazan for Musaf and get the next aliyah. And as it says in Pirkei Avos, whoever runs away from honor is going to run after them. Whoever runs after honor is going to run away from them. So therefore, this person who received maftir, they also receive, they were humble, they weren't insistent to get a aliyah, which is deraisa, a higher level, a biblical aliyah, a form from Moshe. So therefore, they give them the honor of being chazan for Musaf. That's one answer. The next answer is exactly the opposite. Rabbi Bar Shimi says, you remember the name Shimi from before in the Mesechta?
Shimi ben Gira.
Shimi, that's spelled a little differently. Shimi, one of the sons of Haman.
Oh,
right, that we mentioned him before. Rabbi Bar Shimi says, Mishum de'asi le'ansuye. Because they might come to have an argument. The one who received maftir, he received maftir. He receives maftir. He didn't pay for it. And the one who receives, and the one who's chazan usually gets paid for being chazan. The way it was back then is that the chazan got paid. I don't know about nowadays, if chazanim get paid or not. Or balkarias get paid, I'm not sure. But back then, a chazan would get paid. Now the maftir, he was chazan. What was he chazan for? The haftarah. You read the haftarah out loud for everybody. And he's not getting paid at all. But the one who's chazan for musaf, he is getting paid. So the guy who gets maftir is going to get jealous and upset at the next one. How come you're getting paid for being chazan for musaf, and I'm not getting paid for doing haftarah? You know what haftarah was, how hard it was for me. And therefore, they said that the one who received the haftarah, he should also be chazan for musaf in order that he should get paid the fee for doing musaf and doing everything else in order that he should be getting paid the fee. We see it's very important that if someone does something, you should pay them for it. The Gemara says, really? Is that the reason? Elamai. Says the Gemara, Mai benayu. What is a practical difference between these two explanations? Right? If the reason why the one who receives maftir does haftarah, is it because that you want to give him something that's honorable, which is being chazan for musaf, or is it because that you don't want him to argue with the chazan of musaf over who should get the fee from musaf? My binayu, what is the practical difference? Says the Gemara, Iki binayu, there is a practical difference. The avi b'chinam. If the chazan in the shul is chazan for free. If the chazan for musaf is not being compensated, so then there will be no arguments between the one who receives maftir and the one who is chazan for musaf, because he's not being compensated. He's not getting paid anyways. So there's not going to be any strife or arguments. However, according to the first explanation of Rav Papa, the reason why the one who has the haftarah is the chazan for musaf is because he wants to give him something that's makavadik, honorable. So then, in this case, even if the chazan of musaf is not getting paid, he still wants to be chazan for musaf. He wants to do something that's honorable. See how important honor is. There was one time two chavrusas, two friends. They learned in yeshiva together. They were the two top guns in yeshiva. Two top boys, two top bachrim, most learned ones. And they got married. They still stayed very close to each other. And one of them got a job offer, an offer from a city to come be the rabbi in the city. And he moved away to that city. And his other friend didn't have a chavrusa, didn't have a friend anymore. And he got involved in his father-in-law's business, and he started doing business. And he made a decent living. He wasn't wealthy, but he made a decent living. One day, his business travels take him to the city where his friend is a rabbi, and he says, "Oh, I want to go see how my friend is doing. I haven't seen him in so long." He walks into the city, and the first Jewish person he meets on the street, he asks him, "Excuse me, can you please tell me where I can find the rabbi of the city, the rabbi this and so?" And the person looks at him and says, "That rabbi? You call him a rabbi? That piece of whatever, that piece of filth? You And he spat and he walked off, shocked. Wow, what a disrespect this person has for this rabbi of the city. And he goes to the next person, and the next person gives him a similar response. And nobody wants to even talk about the rabbi and mention him. Finally, he finds one person who agreed to show him where the rabbi lives. But as he's walking with a person the entire time, that person is throwing insults and who knows what else. And so against the rabbi. And finally, he comes into the rabbi's house and he walks in. The front door is broken. The steps are broken. House is falling apart. There's nothing on the counter. There's no food in the fridge. And he goes over to him and he says, "What do you need all this for?" He says, "Listen, I'm not wealthy, but at least, I live decently, Baruch Hashem. Nobody has anything negative to say about me. You're living so poor. You're living, everyone has nothing nice to say. Why do you do this? And he says, and tell me, a little bit of kavod is not important? A little bit of honor is not important? Yes, many people get slighted at the smallest things, and you can have family rifts for generations because of honor. So it's very important, especially in a shul, in a house of a place of shalom, not to slight anybody. Continues the Gemara. Gemara will ask a question from our Mishnah. He'll answer this second explanation of Rav Shimi, that the reason why the maftir is the one to be the chazan for Musaf is that there should not be arguments in shul because of payment. He asks a question from our Mishnah. Now, we learned in our Mishnah, he said, if the person was a minor, meaning, let's say a child under 13, a 12-year-old child, a boy, but he's not yet bar mitzvah, and he received the haftarah, as a child is allowed to receive the haftarah. Remember, I said a story once about a bar mitzvah boy who took the bar mitzvah lessons for the wrong week to prepare the wrong parsha, and he did the haftarah of that week. So if a child receives maftir, so then his father, he can't be chazan for musaf, because a chazan has to be over 13, at least bar mitzvah. A blind person could be chazan, but it can't be under 13. So if a child received the haftorah and they're not chazan for musaf, so either their father or their teacher are the ones to be chazan for musaf on their behalf. Now, if you say the reason why the one who reads haftarah, the maftir, the reason why they're chazan for musaf is in order that they should not come to a argument in shul with the chazan of musaf over payment, and that's why he's chazan for musaf. Katan bar nitzuyehu, is a child somebody who could be granted these privileges? A child cannot have any monetary claims. A child does not own any money. If a child owns money, who does it go to? The parents, father. So if can the child be someone to argue from the fact that our Mishnah says that a child could be chazan for haftarah, and instead of them being chazan, it goes to their father, to their teacher to be chazan for musaf. There's no arguments or quarrels over here. The father or teacher didn't do any work to be chazan for musaf, to be chazan to do the haftarah, and therefore there's no. They're not going to be worried that this person is getting paid and I'm not, because they didn't do any work. Answers the Gemara. Elamai mishum kavod. You're going to say that the reason that the maftir is chazan for musaf is because of honor? Katan kavod, who is a child? Somebody who's expecting honor, that they should be granted these privileges. A child gets upset. You didn't give me a aliyah, which is from the Torah. Instead, he gave me an aliyah, which is the Rabbanan. Of course, because a child is under bar mitzvah. He can't get anything from the Torah. Is a child offended that it can't be chazan? You know, I've never seen children of the wall demanding that they should be chazan for Shachris and being the Balkare and only reading the Torah. I've never seen children demanding, you know, we're angry. Why don't we get to put on tefillin? I haven't seen that yet. Are children people which get upset about honor? How come I only got a derabanan dike, a rabbinical aliyah of maftir, and not a deraisa, not a aliyah which comes from the Torah, which comes from Moshe Rabbeinu, of one of the first 7 aliyahs? Obviously, a child is not someone to be particular or expect honor. Eleika kavod aviv v'kavod rabbi. Rather, why does a father or the teacher of the child who had the haftarah, why do they go to be chazan for musaf? Because it's the father's honor, and it's a teacher's honor. You want to give them respect. Turning the page, 24b, So too, according to Rav Shimi, you could say that's true. The child has no claim. The child's not going to go argue about payment with the one who's if someone else is chazan for musaf. However, the child, every cub, don't play with them because there's a mama bear around. Every child has a father, and the father will stand up for the child. Baruch Hashem, do many programs here in Pittsburgh of learning for community, and many are very big, and many are getting bigger, and big and small. And I was told by other people that if you want to have anything successful, the most successful things will be if you get children involved, because their parents will come with them. And I've seen it very, very true, Baruch Hashem. And so the children are the ones, the parents always stand up and protect their children more than they will protect themselves. So therefore, if someone disrespects a child, the father is going to stand up for the child more than the child will stand up for themselves. And therefore, even though the child won't get paid for doing the haftarah, for being a maftir, but the father will say, I should get paid. You should pay him. And if someone is now chazan for musaf, the father is going to start arguing with the chazan for musaf. I should be chazan because I should be getting paid. And therefore they said that it's better that the father of the child is chazan for musaf. See how far the Gemara goes just in order to preserve the honor of another Jew, another Yid. I have a very short story, and then I think going forward. So there's this blue sefer, this blue book. I don't know if you can see it. Let me just make my video more visible. There's this blue sefer, this blue book. It's the laws of Shabbos. It's called Kitzur Halachos. It takes the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. It's just halachos of Shabbos without the opinions inside. So, for example, like Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which is halacha with the reasons and the opinions, right? Opinions and the reasons behind it. It takes out the opinions and gives you just the halacha. And then it has very good on the bottom, has footnotes. Has footnotes as well with many explanations. And this is one which I got from when I was in Rabbi Darren's class. As a matter of fact, here are some tests. Rabbi Darren marked over here when he was my teacher. These are tests in Hilchos Shabbos. He was our teacher for this sefer. It's one of his areas of expertise, Hilchos Shabbos. Here I got 100. Here's 100. And here's 89. But these are my tests when I was a child, when I was young, not child, when I was like Darren was my teacher and all Hilchos Shabbos. And yeah, so going forward, I'm saying these are all, I say halacha l'maaseh, say practical halacha. And he also has very good footnotes on the bottom. The footnotes, which many times bring like an extra reasoning, or extra point that's not brought down in the actual Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe. So all this halacha l'maaseh. So I think going forward, maybe 2 days a week, we'll be doing halacha, laws of Shabbos from this book, from the sefer. I'm going to later check if they have it in English. And 2 days a week, we'll learn Chassidus during the second half. One time during the Mittler Rebbe's times, Reb Shaul Ber Zislin was a Chassid and Mashpia in Eretz Yisrael, and he says that Chassidim were sitting with each other, and they were discussing and talking about what's going to be right before Mashiach comes. It's called Yeridas Hadoros. It says that the generation before the time of Mashiach will be the darkest generation, will be in the lowest spiritual level that could always be. So one person said, the darkness will be so great that they're going to learn Chassidus in the same way, with the same approach that we learn Nigla, the revealed part of Torah. Right? Chassidus, you see openly how it's godliness, and the real part of Torah, you have to know it. You have to work on yourself to have that feeling. Many people learn it without appreciating the holiness of it. So he says people will learn Chassidus like they learn Nigla. And his friend said, like, so bad? That's impossible for such a thing for it to ever be like that. I just don't know if any of those Chassidim from the times of the Mittler Rebbe ever imagined that there'll be people which are called Chassidim, which have never yet learn Chassidus. You never yet had the problem that maybe they're approaching Chassidus the same way they should approach the revealed part of Torah. So I don't know if any they're able to do it. So Baruch Hashem, at least by us, we able to learn Chassidus and Nigla together, and to definitely approach it in the Chassidus in a way godliness, and even the Nigla in a way of godliness.